Wonkette weekend. Oh, hello and welcome to the Wonkette weekend live chat. I am Robyn Pennacchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson. And it's the weekend. Sorry, it's very hot. And I've just been running around like a crazy person trying to find a part of my apartment that is not completely blinding. I And apparently in this one, I look like I'm at a beauty shop, but it's just the lamp. So how are you doing today, Stephen?
I'm well. It is also going to be around 100 and something degrees today. So we're all ensconced in our homes with all the drapes covered. And fortunately, we have air conditioning, but it's, yeah, not the most fun summer, but trying to keep our plants from catching fire. We bought a bunch of plants for our patio. So we're sort of hiding, finding the best places for shade. So, we've had some good news. I promised good news in our intro today, which is
Yes.
the Kansas decision on abortion. Do you mind walking us through what happened and how it was not what the pundits had anticipated?
I mean, I think we all kind of know this by now, but Kansas voted this week to not adjust their constitution so that abortion would be illegal, which is a really, really big deal historically, because where the modern anti-choice movement really started was in Kansas with their Summer of Mercy thing that they where they protested abortion for an entire summer and were generally terrible. And so rather you would assume it's a very red state, it would have gone in the way of outlawing abortion. They decided no, they wanted to keep abortion. So, hey, what's not the matter with Kansas?
Well, and the data's been there for years. I mean, Democrats have been running to certain degrees, running from the abortion issue for a while, in the sense of using words like choice instead of abortion and so forth, and constitutional rights, and so to try to avoid. But whenever the public's been asked, and this goes before Roe v. Wade, the majority of the public is supportive of having their bodily autonomy, surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
And this was always sort of not, to me, a surprise. I think the whole reason Republicans gerrymander states is so that they don't have to answer to the voters. I mean, they've done this when they've passed referendums for recreational marijuana use or other things. They've overturned, it's like, no, we're going to do this, because Republicans don't have to answer their vote to voters. They make sure that they don't. And so this is so in case it did blow up in their faces. I know you commented on this, that John Roberts had tried to avoid overturning Roe, not out of the goodness of his heart, not that he's an abortion defender, but his way, and you've written about this for a while, Robyn, has been effective, which is restricting access to abortion to the point where there's some states where people just couldn't find an abortion. It was always like, oh, it's technically still legal. What do you mean? The headline is
you
just
could
that
not actually go and get an abortion.
Yeah.
Anywhere. So it was functionally not illegal, but you couldn't get it. So it might as well have been. I think a lot of it is, quite frankly, Republicans have been able to frame abortion and abortion rights as, oh, well, what they want is to be able to stab the baby in the head as it's coming out the birth canal. That's what they're trying to do. And Democrats are like, well, we're just going to keep everything vague so that people don't think we're trying to do anything bad, and for a very, long time. And so Republicans were kind of able to fill that void with their own crazy pants narratives. And so you'll hear people very seriously saying well, I'm fine with abortion until the baby, all the normal things about abortion, but I don't want to, kill the baby as it's coming down the birth canal. That's not right. And, I sort of blew up today because
Ralph Northam had was talking about some of, some late term abortion procedures,
Well,
and he,
no, what he
as
was
a doctor,
talking about last year, a couple of years ago, who knows what time is at this point, but what he was talking about was when, someone does give birth and like the baby is not going to live, what, the procedure is then. Like, you don't just, it would actually be cruel to keep a baby on life support indefinitely, because life support isn't, it's not exactly comfortable. And if you know that it's not, the baby is not going to survive, it's not going to be able to live without life support. It's got its, brain growing out of its head or something. Yes, what he said was you make the baby comfortable and, make sure that, they're not in pain and, let nature take its course. And they were like, oh, well, this obviously means that what the Democrats want are abortions at 3 weeks once they're born, like post-birth abortions. And may I say, the Republicans are the only people out there advocating for post-birth abortions, because they're the ones who like the death penalty, not us. Some of us do, but, screw them.
They're very big on a punishment. Their idea is that the baby is innocent.
And they're punishing women.
And they want to punish someone.
Pregnant
as
people.
Nietzsche said, distrust those in whom the urge to punish is strong. And that is sort of a key issue with Republicans. They just love someone has to pay. Someone has to pay for what's happening. I feel like the flip that has occurred is that Democrats were in a position of having to justify these extreme situations. Granted, those are lies, so it's not really hard to push back against the actual lies. Like that Trump was having rallies talking about the babies being born and like people were like stuff that's completely nonsensical. And so that made it harder for them, for the Roberts plan of chipping away at access. So what Alito did with the more radical act has now put Republicans on the defensive, because now very real, awful things are occurring. So 10-year-olds are pregnant, and these situations, so the basics of like, well, how do you determine a life in a mother with these bans? Like doctors, like some women are going to die because they're like, okay, well,
here's the thing, they're not actually that
these are huge real life situations that are occurring that the public is horrified by and they have to answer to, right?
To some degree, yes, but also you have to understand, like, a lot of these Republicans, they very much like the idea of women dying in childbirth in the way that they like the general they romanticize the idea of the mother sacrificing herself for her child.
Yes.
And they're like, that is a beautiful thing. And that is actually so romanticized in a lot of their heads that they have trouble totally understanding why that would be bad.
Oh yeah.
Especially if the woman has other children.
That's unfortunately romanticized in a lot of our fiction.
Like,
Star Wars or whatever, of like, like women, why is this someone dying in childbirth? And then I won't go on.
And also they've got there's the whole idea of, I don't want to think that my mom wouldn't, sacrifice her life for me, because we love those stories about, mothers doing like crazy sacrifices and lifting cars up. We love that because we cherish the idea of a mother's love. And so in their minds, when people are like, oh, to save the life of the mother, they're like, oh, so you're basically saying the bitch is selfish and won't sacrifice her life for her kid. I wonder if my mom didn't love me enough.
Oh, yeah. And I think the advantage Democrats have with this is that if voters have to choose between a total ban and all that entails, and essentially the former status quo, they're going to choose the former status quo. So,
well, because a lot of people didn't really think that, sorry, I had to adjust, like sun was getting in my eyes. I don't think a lot of people ever really thought it was going to happen. Or at least like it wasn't going to happen in a way that was going to affect them. Like, it was like, oh, like, we'll do this and then the horse will learn their lesson. And like, and I don't know what it is that they thought was going to come from that, but.
Well, and this brings us to you've written about this today with Nancy Mace, right? The her her offered compromise, which I remember listening to. It's like, well, that's Roe. Whatever
Yeah.
your her sense of like, oh well, we should have abortion in these situations. Well, yeah, that's Roe, and like with some reasonable.
But like freaking Chuck Todd is not like, doesn't even push back a little bit on, oh, they want to, and the Democrats, they want to stab the baby in the head as it's coming down the birth canal. They just fucking leave that there. Sorry, I'm really bothered by that.
You expect a lot from Chuck Todd, who
I expect nothing from Chuck Todd.
That is almost too much.
But that is, I'm so tired of seeing that. Like, I'm so tired of every time they say it, no one being like, hey, has it occurred to you that this is not a real thing? Like,
well, and I mean, I would be like, okay, fine. No 10-year-olds, have to, I'll give you essentially Roe, and no infanticides, no stabbing babies. So none of this imaginary type stuff. I love signing contracts where I agree not to do imaginary straw man things that I'm not going to do. Like, sure, that's great. Because it's just absurd. She's just trying to manage some both sides thing, but it's like, no, you are advocating for Roe. That was what we had. And of course, she's a hypocrite. She's going to try to say that, like, I would do this, but Democrats want to stab babies in the birth canal type thing. I don't.
But like, every single thing Republicans are mad at is something that they themselves have made up and that no one is doing. Like, they're on Twitter being like, I don't want 5-year-olds watching porn in kindergarten. Like, oh, I'm, because they were going to scream deep throat during, like right before nap time. Like, no one is actually trying to do these things, but they are mad about it and they're going to stop it. And I think that we actually need to follow their lead on this a little bit, because apparently that is what, really does it for people. I personally feel like we should regularly accuse them of, encouraging incest.
Yeah, you had alluded to that great work of fiction, and I don't say this satirically. I really do love this book, Flowers in the Attic, of apparently people going on and on about some of the crazy stuff that kids were reading, or basically anything that had any reference to gay people existing.
Like, oh, we have to ban all of the LGBT books because, oh my God, these children, they're going to come in and they're going to see these books and immediately they're going to turn gay, because that is a thing that happens in real life all of the time. Like, you just like walk in, see a copy of Genderqueer sitting on the shelf, and you're like, oh my God, I'm clearly non-binary. But for some reason, they do not, it doesn't work that same way with Flowers in the Attic, which you don't see them yelling about. They're not like, oh no, kids are going to read Flowers in the Attic. And I read it in 7th grade. I'm sure you read it around the same time. Like, that's when you read Flowers in the Attic, because you're like, this is a weird book. I'm going to read all of the messed up shit in this.
Yeah, I remember my father being like, I was watching the movie, and this is before I started college, and I was watching the movie, which is terrible. The first movie that came out, like with Christy Swanson and Victoria. And he sees, and he's unaware of any of the book or anything. He just happens to come in the room, and whatever, and he sits down with me, and he starts and he's like, oh my, he starts to realize what's happening, and then he just sort of like tries to warn me as I'm about to start college, like, not to do this. And then I have to explain to him, it's like, okay, well, I'm an only child. And I'm 18 years old. Like, where so it's going to happen is like, I'm going to be like in my almost 40, and you're going to have are you guys going to have a sister? And by the time I'm 40, then there's other issues going on. But you've clearly, it's all on you to avoid all the crazy incest. One, don't have
Yeah.
another child, and don't put me into an attic. You put your kids in an attic. I mean, you create this whole kind of social experiment where you
I
put the
mean,
two horny kids in an attic for a while, and
also remember, the mom was a Jesus freak. So like, the moral of that story is if you want to be really holy, lock your kids in the attic until they start fucking each other.
yes. The grandmother was, the mother was kind of, just it was awful. I always loved the
Did
Flowers
you
in the
see
Attic.
the prequel that just came
Yes,
out?
it's based on Garden of Shadows, which was one of the last. It is it's uncertain of how much VC Andrews had written of that before her ghostwriter came in. So it's based on Garden of Shadows. It's a great name, but instead he did Flowers in the Attic: The Origin, as if it's like a
Yeah.
comic book. And it's kind of a mess. So I watched it. Okay, so it's
I
kind
know.
of
I
a mess.
watched it also. I watched the whole thing. By the way, you guys, Steven is like the freaking encyclopedia of VC Andrews. It's one of the things that impresses me the most about my coworker here. I cannot get over it.
No, she's scarier than Stephen King. I was reading VC Andrews and Stephen King around the same time, like 40 years or years ago, and she was like, "Wow, this is like you're really messed up, like this woman's life." And I love that Flowers in the Attic is dedicated to her mother, which I think is the ultimate
Yeah.
FU dedication. I
Oh
dedicate
my
this book about an evil mother to my mother. Read in that what you will.
I mean, something messed up was going on in her family because literally every single book, like there was there was incest and also murdering someone by throwing them down the stairs or maiming them in some way. One of those two things was happening.
A lot
But
of
like,
push downstairs, gang
I know,
rape,
yeah. Also a
scary
very popular
person
way to kill people in lifetimes. But
push down the
yeah.
stairs. And there's this sort of thing in old movies. Bump, bump, bump,
I
bump.
mean, given how often I fall down the stairs, like that is actually very terrifying for me.
You just have
But
the gothic, it's not the gothic horror thing. But this stuff is not, I read this stuff and I did not become a serial killer.
yeah,
So I don't think but it's like the idea of the
I read
existence.
Sybil in middle school. I did not develop multiple personalities, but also that's not a real thing. So, uh, tough there. That was actually probably the most gruesome book I read in middle school.
But
They
it's also
probably have that
anything
there too.
but it's also anything that's sympathetic towards gay culture or gay people or trans people. Because if your Republicans are also the ones to be like, if you were to say, oh, wow, this, maybe you should put a warning before this old movie where the joke is that the person's trans and they all throw up when they find out. And it's like, it's a whole trope of people throwing up when they
Yeah.
realize a trans woman is trans. And they talk about, oh, that's cancel culture, and liberals are all they do is try to repress free thought or whatever. So their idea really is just, and it's consistent, it's just that we don't want any presentation of gay people as being normal.
Yeah.
We saw Lightyear yesterday, and and the kid loved it, but apparently there's a whole backlash because it's a scene of like there's a lesbian couple in the film, which is presented as normal. They have a kid and so forth, but like their reaction to
They
that
were outraged by that. They were like, "Oh, go woke, go broke," or whatever. Like,
yeah, like Ben Shapiro was the idea that it somehow was not a film you could take your children to. It was like, well, gay people exist in the world, so that's what he's saying is
and have children.
He wants a world where that is not acknowledged, or that the hero doesn't respect, the gay cult, but I mean, ultimately, like your character is sort of a jerk if it's just kind of like, if you're saying, hey, Steven, I'm engaged and she's a woman, I'm like, I disagree with your lifestyle and you're going to hell, kind of does not make an audience want to get behind me. And I think that that's just sort of the human nature that they have trouble accepting. They want this this very specific type of world, and it keeps closing in on them. So despite all that Shapiro
like
does,
no matter how terrible they are, and no matter how much they like fuck with everyone, they keep not getting to live in their terrible world that they want to live in. And it keeps getting even, worse for them because the internet exists and they can't even have their like, crappy small towns where they make everyone who's different feel like shit anymore, because those people can just like go online and be like, oh, I'm not a giant weirdo. There are other kids like me out there. Like they can't, basically the only way that they're getting the world that they want is if they go Amish, like at this point. And they know it, and they're absolutely, making a ton of money on, promising people that they can have this world back, and they're not going to get it. Like, sorry, all the trans people aren't going to suddenly be like, you know what, I realize this hurts you, and I realize it's just totally ruining your day, so I'm going to pretend to be another gender if that makes you feel better, or I'm going to pretend to be straight if that makes you feel better.
And again, to clarify, trans people had existed in media, queer people have existed in media, but they've always been usually often the brunt of jokes or villainized. And conservatives were fine with that. So any Dirty Harry movie, I mean, the whole point of Dirty Harry is that queerness is so inherently evil that it must be fought against. So this is kind of not surprising, but they, and their world shrinks. So Shapiro, I mean, he does, of course, now there's like whole white Christian nationalism. So where does Shapiro fit into this? And there's others who've been, Marco Rubio today was like referring to Soros-funded prosecutors. So it's not just to say liberal prosecutors who don't, throw the book at criminals, blah blah blah. He has to link them to George Soros. I'm
sorry, they're the ones who fund everything. I wish we funded more shit. Like, come on. That is projection.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Republicans will try to claim that we talk about the Koch brothers, and so that is no different from, it's not, mentioning Soros all the time, but they are clearly leaning on.
But we don't bring them up when they're not actually funding anything.
Yes.
Also, like, it's not like we're like, oh, these people don't really believe what they're saying. They're only doing it because the Koch brothers are throwing money at them. No, I genuinely believe that people are that terrible. Like, I believe they are terrible, and that, when they were first doing all of that shit, it's like, yes, those people want to wear those ugly ass hats, which I guess is sort of an evergreen thing, but I was referring to like the tricorn hats when they were dressing like, old times. During the Tea Party people thing, like, I believe that those people are fucking sincere. They don't believe, like, their whole thing is that, they don't believe that we're sincere. Like, they're like, oh, they're just pretending to believe these things, but actually they want to do other weird shit that we've made up.
Yeah,
or they really share our values, but George Soros is throwing money at them, and so they're pretending to believe these things.
Well, and there's been this, that some folks on the left who are, I don't know, they want to say all Republicans are terrible and have been garbage, and that there's fundamentally no difference between Nancy Mace's rhetoric or terminology and Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I don't know how constructive that is. I think, I can disagree with the policies of all of these, as far as ultimately Republican policies, I think are destructive and whatever. But, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the one raising lynch mobs, like historically. And it's not as if Democrats who say this, like, are you prepared? You want a Republican Party that's full of the lynch mob gang? Like, where, I don't know if Dick Durbin's going to protect us from the lynch mob. Like, he's prepared more for the Nancy Maces. So I kind of want us to at least be even if Republicans, all their policies is all Paul Ryan kind of crap. We have a Democratic Party with, Dianne Feinstein and Chris Coons, they are not, I mean, yeah, March of the Green, this is scary Nazi crap. They are like a overt threat of violence. And so I think it is important to distinguish the two. But what's disturbing, if you looked at this, the election Tuesday, even more of the anti, so the few Republicans who have spoken out against Trump have been crushed, who tried to impeach him, they got crushed, with some rare exceptions. But there was pushback over the idea, some Democrats were not supporting, but kind of giving a little nudge to
financially.
Yeah. And, everyone's like, well, no, we're just pointing out how terrible they are. It's like, well, oh, come on. It's your intent is very clear. It's a Republican primary. So talking about how this person's too conservative and too radical and loves Trump too much, it's not going to hurt them. It is actually going to help them in the primary. You're putting this money in the primary.
I think it's literally the stupidest fucking idea anyone has ever come up with in the history of ideas.
And their other argument is like, well, Republicans are so radical, they voted for these guys. It's not like we could make them vote for those guys. Like, okay, well then why get your hands dirty? Just, don't get involved at all. Well, let them promote these awful candidates. I wouldn't want to be like, oh, well, I funded this Nazi candidate in Germany, but I thought
and then they won.
I think that's something that really. I wouldn't want to have any sort of bank tracing back to any of these candidates, and it doesn't.
It is delusional to believe that those candidates are more difficult to beat. It really is. It's hello, Trump.
A lot of Democrats, some of our colleagues, a lot of folks strongly believe that these candidates are easier to beat. So like Peter Major, he was defeated, and that John Gibbs, he's going to be easier to beat. And even Cook County Political Report changed that rating from I think to a toss-up or a lean D, because it's the radical. But the reason that math doesn't add up, and we saw it with Kari Lake in Arizona. Kari Lake, who was fundamentally unqualified to run a state in general, but Doug Ducey, who she spent most of the campaign shredding, immediately, he's head of the Republican Government Association, immediately came out saying she has our full support. So if you look at the pattern, because the Republican establishment is so corrupt and would support anyone over a Democrat, because if the establishment candidate won, you're going to have a divided party going to the general, because Kari Lake would have spent the next few months talking about how Robson had cheated her and all sort of stuff. That Gibbs would have spent the whole time, doing all of that. And that actually creates a splintered party. Splintered parties are easier to defeat. Whereas the party, the candidate, the crazy candidate who excites the base, then gets the full support of the rank and file. So they're far more unified. So yes, it's certainly scary. I mean, Lake has a good shot, and these are folks who they're not going to. It doesn't matter if Biden wins. So Lake's not going to certify his victory in Arizona. She would help send fake electors. Same with Doug Mastriano and in Pennsylvania. So this is very scary stuff.
It's just beyond delusional, I think. I said in my thing, I get accused of being, super idealistic, oh no, we can never have all of these wacky things, we're some kind of every other industrialized nation in the world or something. Healthcare, what is wrong with you? Why would you ever think that we could have something like that? Hush, don't even let the Republicans know that we're into that, because they will use it against us and destroy us. It is so much more idealistic to me to genuinely think that we have a better chance of, beating the wacky Trumpy candidate than we do the normal candidate, because the Republicans don't want to be seen liking their normal candidates. Like, it's not cool right now. It's a very, very, very small proportion. Like, you don't see any of them being like, oh, you know who I love is Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. Like, those are my people.
Cheney's going to lose in a rout.
Yeah.
And Kinzinger retired. And so there's the other aspect of Democrats shouldn't even encourage this, only in a sense of you shouldn't make it look as if Trump is this powerful. Because if he's able, if Trumpists are...
Oh, yeah, because if every single... Trump, they get to say, oh, every single one of his candidates, or whatever, a large amount of his candidates absolutely won. And that is, that makes him look like, oh, he is still what people want.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Democratic establishment very much wants to believe it's all about the resume, all about, and at the suburban candidate, and it's like just with Clinton versus Trump, and that there was not about Trump excited a base in a way that Clinton did not. And the rank and file ultimately came to Trump because they wanted the things he could give them. So the rank and file will always, I don't get this idea of Democrats spend so much time with the idea of vote blue no matter who, no matter if you don't like this candidate or whatever, you have to vote for, because, the other option is fascism. It's like, okay, well, that hyper partisanship is what Republicans are going to do. So you're saying vote blue, vote blue, vote blue, but then you go to Republicans and say, oh, well, don't vote red no matter who, vote for this respectable Democrat. And I feel like that's at cross purposes.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing. So then it's all about getting your supporters to the polls in sufficient numbers.
Well, I think that vote blue no matter who thing is more directed towards people like me. Like, I think it's more direct. It's not directed towards, it's actually not directed towards the kind of Democrats who might vote for Republicans sometimes. It's directed towards, people like me who, they think, oh, well, you're a bunch of spoiled brats who think everyone should have health care. Pony, and also ponies. Why wouldn't, you need to just like get in line and vote blue no matter who. Do not vote for, a third party. Do not stay home, and I think that's really what it's about. It's like, don't, try and push the idea that some Democrats are not far left enough, because it's good, because then they can attract these mysterious Republican votes for people who are like really into statesman-like politicians who are relatively neutral.
Which there's no evidence behind that or anything that actually.
Literally all the people who are into that already vote Democrat. Like,
yeah, and also I feel like if you learned anything from 2020, it's the fact that the MAGA, the Trumpists, they're terrorists. Like they go outside people's homes. There's risk, huge risk. And the January 6th hearings show that, of like the hell unleashed on election workers and so forth. And to me, it's immoral to even cross your fingers and hope for a scenario where the supposedly crazy but potentially more beatable opponent wins, because what you're doing is setting up a scenario where election workers and your actual candidate's life is going to be at risk from facing Katie Hobbs is going to need to ramp up her security if she's facing Carrie Lake, as opposed to Robson, your typical normal terrible Republican, probably would not have sent mobs to kill her. Tudor Dixon in Michigan is going to be.
I still don't know how that's a real person's name and like not a like marketing firm of some kind.
Tudor Dixon. Yeah, so I think it's dangerous, it's scary. But some good news I just saw on the transom. So the Senate passed the Inflation Reduction Act through reconciliation. Now heading to the House. You're supposed to be so enthused, Robyn.
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
It's the best we can do, I guess. Let's not try and add anything onto that would, really help some people or change some things. Like, let's not rock the boat too much. And then we'll just blame the Senate parliamentarian. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I feel that's one of the people, Republicans just sort of would have just fired her, but I
yeah.
guess we're just like, okay, well, she's not Moses coming down with, so she's just sort of, okay, well, people literally don't get insulin as a result of
Yeah.
that. And that's tough. And
And I think
when
that we
people
need
say
to,
she's
like,
doing her job, I would be like, well,
I
it's
like what John's
insulin.
doing is like, oh, they tried to make us look bad by doing the insulin vote. And like, yes, keep fucking doing the insulin vote. Do it over and over and
We
over and
look
over again.
bad. Just
Never
put
stop
a
doing
cap
the
on
insulin vote.
insulin so someone's
And,
hands don't fall off or their feet rot, or that seniors can have teeth. And
yeah. Oh,
I
could
feel like
seniors
from the
maybe have dental care
parliamentarian.
and hearing aids, like so that they're not like walking around, um, unaware of their surroundings? Because that would be nice.
If you're the parliamentarian, what's the harm? It's insulin. Like it
Yeah.
would be like, yeah, sure, whatever. I would be like, yeah, whatever. Like, does anyone pay that much attention? And I'm not trying
Oh,
to be
well,
a
people pay
parliamentarian.
that much attention. That is something because, the pharmaceutical industry makes bank
But
on
she's
charging
supposedly
people.
a nonpartisan actor. She could just say, "Look, I read it and it works." What can She's not supposed to be like someone that the pharmaceutical industry can
Oh,
strong
no, it
arm,
would have
right?
passed if three more it would have been fine, actually, if three more Republicans had supported it.
Josh
It would
Hawley
have gone
supported
through.
it. He's really
Yep.
going. He's going in on the whole um, right wing populism thing.
Yeah.
I think
I will tell you, Josh Hawley scares, not scares, but like Josh Hawley is the future of that party, and we need to be prepared for that. Like they're terrible Christian nationalists who also sometimes support things that actually do help people because that's kind of combining the best of both worlds for a lot of folks.
Oh yeah,
Like
I
most
will
people are not
entrust
as
that.
conservative as we pretend they are.
Well,
Like,
yeah, we will make sure that the wrong people are punished and the right people are rewarded, which is a
yeah,
fundamental aspect of authoritarianism. And you get, cinema trying to do everything she can for private hedge funds or all this sort of stuff.
yeah,
This sounds like on paper like Rockefeller republicanism, and
yeah,
the MSNBC crowd loves that. Like, oh well, she's theoretically pro-choice and theoretically pro-civil rights, but she's fully in the pocket with big pharma and all these groups, and it's just like, well, that's Rockefeller republicanism,
which
and
is like
not
the
populism.
exact opposite of the fucking vibe right now. Vibe is the only word I can
Oh no, I mean
really
that's the
use to
irony of
describe. It's like the
Trumpism, right?
exact opposite.
It's the irony of Trumpism because Trump being, this sort of New York real estate developer, but he really sort of opened the door of the idea of this kind of, yeah, of course, we'll help the little guy, and he screwed them. But as you said, Holly has leapt on that, and others leapt on that of just like, well, yeah, like vote for this while not voting for that. Um, some even of the isolationism
Mhm.
appeals to the average person because there's like, well,
Yeah,
you know, you get these suburban Democrats talking about let's go fight this war and that war,
yeah.
and well, you're not fighting it, right? So they spin it as in like, well, these are the folks who are gonna get killed in these wars. So it is a sort of, this populism is a risk, and I feel like you do need to sort of step up and um
And I think that
fight
a lot
back
of people are
against it.
like, oh, okay, so this is like our chance to be like, we're the ones who like war. We're the ones who like corporations. This will surely dazzle a large amount of people, but that was never really why people were attracted to the Republican Party in the first place. It's not like, they used that, but it was the fucking leat watershed. It was we're cutting taxes, we're, doing all this stuff, but the end result is that, people of color are screwed more. Like, that is what they wanted. Yeah, sorry, that is oh my God, $3,000 to $5,000 for hearing aids. That is truly horrifying. I actually did not know how much they cost.
Well, yeah. Well, most healthcare really does.
Yeah, it's
suck.
insane. It's
And if you
insane.
actually need, true coverage, you're not going to be, taken care of. And so the Rand Paul, the wing of like the freedom to die in poverty type stuff doesn't really win anyone over. And I think Hawley's one of those things of, well, attack the corporations. DeSantis is doing it, the woke corporations. So you have,
because people hate corporations.
A Republican governor going after Disney, no one would have imagined. And even Democrats are like, we went after Disney. And it's the shock of, it seems as if they're sort of shocked that like someone went for the whale, right? Like it's not like, oh, you should go to Disney. It's like, oh my God,
I think it's really that they very much thought that like, their great love of corporations was had as much to do with what the people wanted as what like who was paying them wanted. And that people were like, no, we love corporations, that's great. Like it's sort of like they're now like sort of combining not the best of both worlds, but some good from us and tainting it and making it terrifying.
Well, yeah, and it's a complicated issue with corporations regarding abortion or civil rights or cases, because we've discussed this of how, yes, people who have any other option probably aren't going to live in places where they're going to be second-class citizens. However, Democrat and I saw, unfortunately, some Democrats will do this thing of where, why would anyone live in, these states, steering their noses, which is just like, well, because their family lives there, they're poor, or like, okay, even in these supposed liberal utopias like Portland, whatever, in Seattle,
it's fucking expensive to live here.
It's expensive to live in most places where, and that's an unfortunate aspect. So Democrats are kind of like, oh, this is great. We've got the suburbs, we've got the cities. It's like, it is incredibly expensive in those places to live there. And in many cases, it's better to move out to, and this was what's happening. A lot of folks were moving out to parts of the South, building up these areas. And it was, now you're saying, oh, you need to abandon all of it, give it over to Marjorie Taylor Greene, because we're not going to defend you at the federal level is not compelling. And it's not going to really work long term. And I get it.
The thing is, it's actually going to get worse in those places because, a lot like, fuck Eli Lilly, but Eli Lilly is like, we're going to have to leave Indiana. They're probably going to have to leave a lot of these states and leave these people without jobs because they can't, any company wants to be able to attract the best people. And if they can't get people to move to those areas,
but aren't they talking through their ass though? Don't those places, don't they have the money to really leverage? Because if you look, it was sort of only like through 3 months after January 6th where the corporations suddenly giving back to Republicans again. So it's just like, just don't give your money, don't give corporate dollars to, it's hardly the folks in the MAGA hats who are keeping Ted Cruz afloat and these candidates afloat. It's corporations specifically who are donating to Republicans, who believe Republicans are better for them, no matter, as you say, how much Democrats try to be good for them. So, to me, it's like, okay, well, like why isn't Disney, I feel like Disney sort of seeded this fight. Like, to me, it's the idea, and many Democrats thought this would be, okay, well, Disney will unleash its corporate fist and might and crush DeSantis. He shouldn't get reelected. He's picked a fight with Disney, and that should be it. But instead, it didn't happen. And similar with Coca-Cola and Georgia about voting rights. And so it seems like these corporations, all they do is a PR spin, right? It's like, oh, well, and we're going to have to move. And so, but again, that just looks, in Indiana.
Although I just realized something. just connected something in my brain. And it has to do again with Kansas. Kansas got really, really fucked when the Republicans that they elected into office decided to, like, you know, make their place into like a modern day Chile under Pinochet, and like cut all the corporate taxes, cut, you know, like make it, you know, so that corporations would, you know, be dying to run there, so they'd have, like, you know, no regulations, you know, be able to pay people crap wages, and no one came. And like Kansas got really fucked like economically by that. That was Brownback, I believe, like fucked. Because the corporations didn't want to move there, no matter how like economically good it was for them, because they couldn't move there and be like, okay, well, we can, like, the schools were unfunded. They're not gonna be able to move there and like educate their kids. They're not gonna be able to move there and have things to do, which is actually a major reason for why places can't attract doctors now. Like Kansas was fucked. Oh, yeah. And I think that may have something to do with why they, you know, decided, you know, we're not going to outlaw abortion because we've been there. Like,
oh yeah, but Devis is whether or not they're going to vote for, they still are going to vote for Republican candidates who will still enforce fascism. Similar with Kentucky, right? Like Kentucky, despite what happened, and no one, regardless of their vote, should suffer from, you know, flooding and, you know, sort of disasters. But they're still going to vote for Republicans. Part of the problem is that it's about identity, and I think Democrats struggle with that, which is the idea of like, beating Trump is not about pointing out his resume, or beating Republicans is not about pointing out the resume. It is ultimately a trust issue. If you trust one candidate over the other, it won't, you know, we see this again. I see a lot of trolls who go after, and they you know, centrist trolls who go after Trump, or they go after the Squad or Sanders or any political populists. They believe that they can convince them by talking about how stupid they are. And so all they come across is like condescending jerks, but that's not how like politics work. Politics works by building trust. You need to build trust in yourself and and that they will, and when you have trust, people don't believe the worst aspects of you, or you will find excuses. So they've done the polling this, like, here's what these Republicans are going to do. And they're like, I don't think they're going to do that, because they have trust. Often Democrats will respond of like, oh, well, they're all racist in those states, which I don't know how that's constructive, because then you're just saying that that's okay. Like, unless you create the, like Superman did in a storyline where he brainwashed the entire world, it was an anti-evil machine, and that's how he retired. This is a true story.
Is it, Stephen? Is it a true story?
No, actually, it wasn't. It was what they used to run things called imaginary stories. So this is like, this isn't a real Superman story. This is an imaginary story, because there are Superman stories that are perhaps not imaginary. But anyway, in this one, he creates an anti-evil ray that turns everyone good. So, but we don't have anti-evil rays, so we can't. You know, if you're just dismissing half the population in these states as racist and misogynist and will always vote for the racist and misogynist, then it's over. And then if you believe that, then you should also, okay, well, then make Puerto Rico a state, turn California into 5 states, do something to make up for that fact, because otherwise you're going to lose big. So I think, but yeah, I mean, I think one big problem, I mean, I found that a lot of Democrats can come across as condescending jerks, and no one wants any part of that. They come into you and tell you why you're stupid, why you want, you know, things, why what you want is a unicorn. And I responded to someone that had this on Twitter, the idea that like, oh, well, these liberals come in and promise these unicorns. It's like, okay, well, one, these are specifically things that Democrats had run on in 2020.
Yeah, Republicans promised a lot of unicorns, and now they're getting their unicorns. Like,
and it's just not a unicorn. It's just
they got a fucking unicorn parade.
And how does
because
that
people
work in the
really wanted their
private?
unicorns.
And how does that work in the real world? So if it's just like, if you hired me to do something and I failed to fix your air conditioning and it's incredibly hot, you're a reasonable person. If I apologized, if I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's really, I'm sorry. I thought I was gonna have the guy, but this cinema lady screwed up the air conditioning order. I'm sorry." You'd be like, "Okay, I'll give you another shot." But if I
Yeah.
come out and it's like, "Okay, look, what can I do?" Someone's wants our ponies and unicorns, and you're like, "Well, you're a jerk, and I don't want to
Yeah.
hire you again." So I don't think berating people about their civics or their responsibilities or being jerks, but it's just it's incredible. I
Well,
mean,
it's
as I
like
said, it's
there,
just
I
like
think
not
there is this
effective.
idea that, okay, Republicans got successful by villainizing the left. And they're like, so people are like, okay, well, we just have to copy that if we want to win. We have to villainize them and be like, they're all bad. Um, but I don't think that works as well for us as it does for them, because of how they're assholes voting for asshole things. Um,
Well,
like,
and
I
they
don't
don't.
actually think that works. The other thing that I want to say is that a lot of that is, there's very much this idea that if let Republicans be terrible and then Democrats can be neutral and then we'll scoop everyone up. And like all
Mm,
the people who are like, I just kind of wish that things were basically like, okay, and I didn't have to think about anything ever, will vote for Democrats. But that is what is actually ending up happening, is that you're creating, like, a void is being created
mm.
by being like, we're going to be sort of neutral on things. We're not going to, like, be like, oh, you can't be, you know, anti-abortion and run as a Democrat. We want the big tent, blah blah blah. We want conservatives too. Um, you end up creating a void, and that's why Republicans are so successful, I think, when they just make shit up that
Oh yeah.
Democrats believe. Like,
Well,
if you don't say, like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to fight for, then people are able to, you know, because the goal is to be with, neutrality is to be a blank slate that people can sort of like pin their own hopes and dreams
yeah.
on. But sometimes that works backwards, and people are like, oh, that's a blank slate, I'm going to turn that person into a monster.
Yes, and there's no reason to like even some of like Bush's Bushisms he would sometimes own, not pretend,
Mm-hmm.
and be like, "Oh, I got attacked by a pretzel," and would try to be endearing about it in a way that sometimes Democrats can be less so. Again, it's this sort of condescending thing of, you do not know as well as the next person, or you are not as smart as me, and you are not
Yeah.
as. It's just like sort of a Aaron Sorkin West Wing thing that just
It
doesn't work.
appeals to the people that it appeals to. It appeals to a lot, and those are people who have a lot of power and a lot of like sway, I think. Like, there are a lot of people who, like us, tend to be in the media and kind of want to have their, like, you know, have some, shit blown up their ass. Like, about like, oh, you're the smart people, you're the intellectuals, you wouldn't vote for someone stupid because you're smart. And I don't think that that actually goes over well with people who aren't pundits.
No, no one likes to be um, and call people out for being stupid for as you wish. I often do that, but I feel like it is the sort of thing of like, you are not classically educated, or you are not.
Yeah.
Well, it is that, and especially because this idea of, well, this particular politician might speak in a word salad, but we like her, so we won't say that she's dumb. But Lauren Boebart's word salad we'll call out because she doesn't have a degree,
Yeah.
even though it makes no it what she's saying is no more nonsensical than someone else. And I've seen it before of like, oh well, Bobart is legitimately dumb. Lee Stefanik is Ivy League educated, so obviously she is
Yeah.
pretending to
Yeah.
fool
Well,
you
there's also,
ruse.
I mean, there is that like absolute worship of the Ivies and like, oh, well, if you're, it's this very deep-seated belief that, people who go to Ivy Leagues are only pretending to be Republicans because they're so educated they could not possibly really believe that bullshit. But there are a lot of, educated, stupid people, I think.
Oh yeah, and educated and racist, whereas like a lot of working class people without college degrees are not racist, not sexist, and I think
Well,
what
because they
happens
actually,
with
also sometimes interact with people of color in their day-to-day lives.
oh yeah, I mean, as I said, that's who I kind of grew up with and around. And what is interesting, it is about sort of the state of grace with like respect for that because I've seen, um, it's kind of this cultural thing. I feel like when they talk about the backlash with a lot of diversity training and diversity, and I've seen this as well, it will be essentially, okay, Robyn, every way that you interact and have grown up interacting is wrong. And for me, I feel like that's not cool. Like I didn't like that
Yeah.
as a Black person, be like, here's your culture and everything about your culture is wrong.
Mhm.
You need to learn this different culture to fit in. That's not cool, but it's also not cool for you. So it was just like the idea of like, okay, Robyn, here's how every way that you engage with the world is white supremacy. It's like, well, maybe I'm just a person from Seattle or Chicago. I'm from a person and this is my background as well. Meaning there's a way to sort of, okay, well, let's all try to communicate well with each other and
Yeah.
understand each other. But I mean, I
And
don't
don't hurt
think,
people. And if you hurt someone, feel bad that you hurt them and change
yes,
your way.
but
Like
not
that's
like
just like
you need to
how
change your entire,
humans should
don't speak
be.
with your hands. It's like a rude, like, what? That's white
Hey,
supremacy. It's like,
I'm
well,
not that bad. Jesus.
well, I saw that a lot with some. I saw that a lot with some candidate where it was like everyone who's speaking with his hands was somehow violence. It's like, well, I think that's sort of an ethnic.
Oh, that was Bernie. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like I don't think that it means that he's going to slap
But
someone.
okay, this is the thing though. I gotta say, the most of the people that I saw saying that were like, I mean, I live in the Midwest now, but it was people from the Midwest
Mhm.
who, I I met a guy from Indiana one time who was like, "You're the first ethnic white I've," which I still, I was like 23 and I was like, "The fuck is an ethnic white? I don't know what you're talking about, weirdo." Um, like, but like, they do not hang out with a lot of particularly expressive
Yeah.
people.
For me, it's like I think it's a good thing to adapt to whatever culture you're in and wherever you are. I feel like no one would, if when I go to France or Germany or whatever, I think, oh, this is, I would read the Rick Steve things. It's like, okay, well, I'm only going to get a sandwich a certain way in Germany. Germany's great this way because they would know they don't do the whole different types of like you only, there's like these are the 5 sandwiches and that they've made. It's very efficient. We're in Berlin, and like I remember one lady was on a tour guide with us, and she was asking for like, can I get mayo? Like she thought she was at Subway, and the woman's like, no, and very
Germany
polite.
is the perfect place for you, Stephen.
I love the
They're
journey.
like, there
I
are
remember reading Rick
rules.
Steves' description of France, which is like French people are very nice. They just don't walk around the street. They want, smiling because they think that makes you look like an idiot. And I was like, I like these people. I like the French. No, but yes, I feel like there's this.
You have to be careful with smiling because if you smile in public as a woman, some dude is gonna like, come and start talking to you about how he can't get ice out of the ice bag refrigerator at Mariano's, which is a thing that happened to me yesterday.
What, was that a pickup line or legitimate?
I think it was like he was like really like, I don't know how to get these ice bags out. And I'm like, okay, if you like talk to me in like the pasta section or something, I can help you out. I
Why?
can help you out with ice bags. I don't know
Why
what
are
this
people
is.
still trying to meet each other this way? Like, don't we have the? I thought the internet solved that. Like, so the internet,
Yeah.
is sort of like, I want to engage with another human being, potentially for the purpose of procreation, recreational or otherwise, whatever. And you go on and you meet other people and you have the date, as opposed to like, I'm going out in the world and I have to dodge fools who want to hit on you while you're just grocery
I've
shopping.
actually still never like for a decent amount of time dated someone that I met on the apps or anything.
So it was people
But
at grocery stores are asking you. I hope not. That's like
no,
a
mostly just like friends of friends. I've never gone on a date with someone that I met at the grocery store. Although, like, for some reason, I have like the look of someone that like can help you your ass out at the grocery store. Every time I go to the grocery store, someone's asking me a question. They're like, "This bitch knows what she is doing."
maybe it's your
Here in
pose
the
from
grocery
having
store,
worked retail. You have a certain
I have
pose,
a certain vibe.
vibe that
Um,
like I can assist
Although at
you.
the same time, I do sometimes, just offer advice when people depth. Oh, hello. Oh, I don't like this, but no.
We wound up flipping.
Yeah,
We're actually from a different universe.
yes.
We should have like the goatees from a parallel universe or so forth. But
You know,
yes,
some people have resting bitch face. I have rest. Oh, it's actually been very, very difficult. I have been on so many dates that I did not know were dates. I cannot even tell you. I've date like people have been like, we dated, and I'm like, we did not date. I thought we were friends. Um, or like I've also had a lot of stalkers. Like because I don't know. I actually have like had to like decrease my Robynness or whatever. I don't know what to call it. Because like you make a dude feel good about himself, and I'd like to make everyone feel good about themselves. That's sort of like my thing. I want everyone to feel wonderful about themselves and come
mhm.
away being like, I'm awesome. That is actually pretty dangerous when it comes to men, because
Yes,
then they end up outside your apartment being like, I can see what that you're watching Law and Order. What episode are you watching? I'm sitting at the bar across from your apartment. I'm going to just keep texting you 45,000 times a day.
that's that's. I mean that's bizarre. I don't know where men
Your
get the
people are
idea that
terrible.
I don't know where men get the idea that is ever effective or appropriate. It is very it's very freaky. Um, so yeah, so we have the Senate deal going. It's good that it's happening. Republicans are very upset they had the whole vote-a-rama. They're also very upset that they had to come into work. So you had Chuck
Oh, yeah.
Grassley being like,
Rubio was having a big pout fest on Twitter.
"Well, it's their job. I'm sorry." Like I
Yeah.
love this whole thing of like we're supposed to accept that. Like Chuck Grassley's like, I was supposed to have my family reunion in August. A schedule. You're like 1,000 years old. Just retire. Like just retire and be with your family, who I assume like you. Like don't
Oh,
why
do you though? I don't think. No.
who knows? I like to
They're
pretend
like
that
this
people like
fucking guy. They're all glad he did not show up.
yes. So our but it passed. I mean, I think Biden's had a very good week. More importantly, Democrats have had a good week. So Democrats are also have been polling better than Biden, which is good. And there's potential that it won't be a total rout, even if you lose the House, Senate. Um, it's better to not get clobbered because then we would get closer to some sort of crazy Ron DeSantis 2025 filibuster proof majority rule type thing. And DeSantis is nuts. He's the guy who just like he basically replaced a prosecutor who was elected because he felt like he wasn't prosecuting the way DeSantis wanted. DeSantis is just like a full on autocrat nightmare. So I wish we could actually replace him. I felt like, do you get the sense that Democrats are taking that race seriously? I mean, we have Charlie Crist and maybe Nikki Fried, but are we putting all of our money into this race to try to like
I
stop
don't, I
things?
mean, I don't think so, but I think there's almost like this like sense of like, well, can't go up against this guy. He is like, whoa, like
He
the king
won
of the
by like
Republicans.
30,000 votes the last time. He only narrowly won, and he was running against, Andrew Gillum.
Yeah.
So I would think that
And
there's
like,
a
come
different.
on. I thought you guys were gonna get all the Cubans. Sorry, I still find this hilarious. Um, like, yeah, we're gonna get all the Cuban Republicans in Florida. That's why we can't do anything socialist, because they'll be sad about that. Or do anything about Guantanamo for some reason. That was a thing briefly. But yeah, I think that we definitely need to be putting more energy into that. Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah. Well, what do you have going on for tomorrow that you might treat the folks with?
I don't know, but I actually might write something about like Kansas having learned its lesson with like its terrible economic policies, and that could be, part of why, they're sort of not changing their ways, but like, not voting to get rid of abortion because they don't want to not have jobs. And they don't want to, well, they don't want to like give,
Reasonable.
anyone an excuse to be like, oh, well, we can't be based in Kansas or do anything in Kansas because everything there sucks, which is going to happen. Like, it is going to happen that a lot of these companies are going to move out of these states because, yeah, if the best person for that job is, anti-abortion, they'll go to a pro-choice state. They'll go to a state where abortion is, legal. It's not like, oh, my life will change if I don't do that. But a lot of people who are like, oh, I care whether or not I or my children have reproductive rights are not going to be moving their ass to some like state where they do not have those rights.
Well, that just makes it more likely that Republicans will try to do a nationwide ban because then there'd be no escape and it becomes
Mm-hmm.
a non-issue. So don't
And they
trust
will try for it.
Yeah, don't trust
Nothing is too
Republicans to say
extreme.
otherwise. And Nancy Mace will vote for it because
Yeah.
she's terrible. She's a Republican, and
And
so
then she'll be like, oh my God, it's like The Handmaid's Tale. I didn't know it was going to be like this. What?
I think the danger of that book I've always found is because it presents it in such a way that it's so big and it's not subtle.
Yeah,
It's
and so
subtly
extreme.
glowing. There's bad outfits. It's like everyone's in this bad out. So when you can cosplay fascism, it's much easier. But it's like obviously it won't be the case. I think people will still be able to. They won't know what's occurring because I think that's been the story in the past. Like when black people were still wearing normal clothing when they were second-class citizens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The second you bring outfits into the mix, I think, is when it gets awkward. Like, and I'm a lady who loves costumes, but no. Oh, I do have to show something off real quick. I bought the greatest earrings in the world.
Yeah, I saw those online. Those are all. Where did you
They
find
say
those?
fuck.
Yes.
I got them across the street from my apartment, and I was like, these are the greatest earrings in the entire world, and I'm so excited about them.
Awesome.
So,
well, we're all very excited that you.
And what do you have going on for tomorrow?
I might write up about the Senate bill and its will pass and how we've actually it does do a lot of good things. So I'll just steal heavily from Doc because Marty always like breaks down things very well. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening and tuning in, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time at the Wonkette Live. Bye-bye.
Bye.